Goodbye 2022. Hello 2023. Like and subscribe, hate, and comment. So, as we close the book on 2022, looking ahead to 2023, are there any elections that we should care about? Is there anything in politics we should be wondering about? Should we just skip to 2024? The answer to those are yes, yes, and no. Because a lot of what happens in 2023 sets the groundwork up for 2024. So, these are the 7 things we should look at for the next upcoming year in politics. First off is the races in Virginia, the delegates and Senate races in the state. Now, the governor, of course, was elected in 2021. Virginia is odd. You only get 1 term as governor, then you got to take a break. And Youngkin, who is thinking about possibly running for a seat up the I-95, well, he's going to have to think, can I and should I do this if I don't get control of either house? Right now, the Democrats control the state Senate. The delegates are controlled by the Republicans. Almost as tight as the House and Senate is in D.C. And if Youngkin wants to increase his chances at the presidency, or probably more likely, if he wants to take a run at the Senate seat, it's going to be better for him if his party controls both houses, or at the very least doesn't get blown out in any of them. Because if he does, he can kind of kiss 2024 presidential and likely 2024 Senate goodbye. Now, when it comes to things you really have to look for on an election, is what are the special elections going to look like next year? Now, of course, do we know what any of them are going to be? Okay, well, technically we know Virginia 4. It's going to be a Democratic seat. The incumbent died. He got 63% of the vote. Even if Democrats only win it by 8 points or win it by 40 points, it just has more to do with the random voter turnout. What I'm talking about is there any senator who's going to pass away, and with a 4-seat majority in the House, every seat counts. One of those that you have to look at is, well, will Santos actually sit in Congress? Now, did he lie? Absolutely. And that's not a disqualifier for government. I mean, if we kicked out everybody who lied to get a political office, we would have nobody in government. But did he do pretty egregious stuff? Absolutely. But he was duly elected. Nobody doubts he was duly elected. So he will be allowed to sit, at least for a while. But will Republicans allow him to caucus? Now, as we get to later on in this video, I'll say why they really have to flip a coin on this. Because it's only a 4-seat majority. And kicking him out, does that create a situation where he just becomes an absolute bastard and doesn't want to do anything the Republicans do? On the other hand, if the Republicans didn't have a majority, or if we had a much bigger majority, he'd be out in a heartbeat, at least from the caucus, if not through an ethics investigation to disbar him from the seat. Now, it is possible that Santos will resign. There is, who knows that? That would be up to the governor of New York to set an election. And with the seat being what it is, 52 Republican for him, these things don't turn out well for the party that gets kicked out. So you could be looking at a 3-seat majority. And this should have been a bright spot. First openly gay Republican elected, off the bat. We have had gay Republicans serve in the past, state of Arizona, being most prominent, but never being elected, as part of their platform, that they were. Lying about being Jewish, just the whole thing is a cluster. But with as tight as the House is, that's a $50 million question. Do you let him sit? And for how long? Now, onto that topic of important elections that are coming up. We've got to look at Louisiana. Now, Louisiana's governor will be vacant. Louisiana has a 2-term. Right now it is occupied by a Democrat, and they do that funky jungle primary. So If you are a presidential candidate who may want to tip the scales for one of your candidates, you got to be really leery because it's a jungle primary. The last thing that you want to do is get two Democrats or a Democrat and an independent to be the final two candidates because you split the Republican vote way too far down the drain. I expect the Republicans to pick up the governor's mansion, not because the current governor has done anything bad. He's perfectly fine for that state. But coming out of 2022, there is definitely going to be momentum, at least in the South, to get a non-Trump candidate into particular offices. Why? Because the next thing you have to look for is, when are people going to announce that they're running for president? Now, yes, there is this guy named Donald Trump who has already announced. But there are a lot of other people that are out there. Both senators from Florida, the mayor of Miami. There's another Republican from Florida that we'll talk about at the end. You also have Governor of South Dakota, Nome. You have Youngkin, who may run. You have the other Scott from South Carolina who may throw his hat in there. The governor of New Hampshire. Former Governor Hogan of Maryland. Nikki Haley. You got a lot of people out there who are going to consider running. When do they announce, and how many ultimately get in? 2016, you had 19 Republicans. 2020, you had 29 Democrats. And no, if you know all 29 Democrats, you are literally reading off a list and somehow pronouncing them all right. I imagine we'll probably get to 8 candidates, maybe 9. But of course, Donald Trump is already in. And it's going to be the primaries, within the primaries, who's going to be the female candidate between the governor of South Dakota and Nikki Haley, who's going to be the current governor candidate from the other male governors, who is going to be the Donald Trump, and who is going to be the firebearer of the party. Now, the other election that is most important for 2024 is the Kentucky governor's race in 2023. Now, in 2019, the Democrats picked up this seat. It was a perfect storm for Democrats to win it, perfect storm against the Republican. You had an unpopular governor in 2019 running for re-election who did not have much public support by either Republican senator in Kentucky. A becoming more unpopular President Trump, and just bad policies with an incredibly popular Attorney General Democrat who fit everything in to get that inside straight to become the governor. Now it's time for re-election. And it's hard to beat an incumbent, but he's still the only Democrat in Kentucky. Like, literally, I don't know if there's another Democrat in the state. Is that enough to get a second term? And do the Republicans learn from their mistakes and choose a Mitch McConnell-like candidate, not Mitch McConnell, or at least a Rand Paul-type candidate, not Rand Paul, and not a Donald Trump-like candidate? That's your primary. The Mitch McConnell wing and the Donald Trump wing, again in Kentucky. Because Mitch's re-election is around the corner. Assuming Mitch runs for re-election, he has an age where he may decide to hang it up. You know, Pat Leahy in Vermont decided to lay it up. He's been there forever, and literally in every Batman movie. 2 more things you have to look at. First and foremost, is Canada having an election? No, I'm serious about it. Canada's correlation with American elections is actually really high. Canada just had their national election in 2021. It is not a majority liberal government. The NDP, will they continue to caucus with liberals to keep from having an election? The Conservatives just put in Pierre as their head of party. Do they decide to have an election? Now, they're not set terms. You just have to have an election after 5 years. Generally, it's after 4, but in divided minority government, usually it's 2. And the last government was 2 years. Does Trudeau want to get a fourth term and possibly get a third minority government, fourth term overall? It's very rare for prime ministers to get 4 terms without a break. I think he will roll the dice and sometime in October call an election for November. Now, lastly, does Ron DeSantis run for president? Most of these videos that you're going to see somebody talking about the future, it's when does Ron DeSantis announce? I don't think it's 100% certain that Ron DeSantis is going to run for president. Ron DeSantis is young. He's only a year older than me. He has 3 young children. He has a wife who's in remission. He has decided either way, he will not announce until after session, which would be the end of May in the state of Florida. He's got former governor, current Senator Scott. He's got Marco Rubio, current senator. He's got the mayor of Miami running for president, or at least rumored to be running for president. He won't be the most conservative candidate. That would be the governor from South Dakota. He wouldn't be the youngest candidate. Could he decide, much like Chris Christie did in 2012, to stay out? Just serve your term. And remember, he's got to deal with insurance, hurricanes. He might take a powder on this one. So don't be surprised if Ron DeSantis does not run. I think he will. And if he does decide to run, you're looking around July 4th for the announcement. But if we're into late June and it doesn't hear like he's running, he's going to take a pass. So like and subscribe, hate, and comment. I'll see you in 2023.